Welcome to the Bears Talk Podcast, your ultimate source for all things Bears. Hosted by Brian Perez, editor of Chicago Bears on SI. From insider analysis to the latest news, we cover everything you need to know about the monsters of the Midway. Stay locked in. Bears football starts now.
It's a great day to be a Chicago Bears fan. Welcome back to the Bears Talk Podcast. I am your host, Brian Perez, and it is great to finally be back behind the mic. I know it's been a little while, Bears Talkers, since we've been able to get a show produced, but there's good reason for it. As you can see, a lot has changed over the last couple of months. We have moved from bearstalk.com over to Bears on SI. That's right. All your Chicago Bears content on Sports Illustrated is produced by yours truly and a great team of Chicago Bears content creators, from Gene to Alan to Lauren to Pete. You name it, we have a crew of writers at Bears on SI that is giving you literally unparalleled Chicago Bears content every day. And, of course, now the Bears Talk Podcast is part of the Minute Media Podcast Network, and I am fired up. We're going to be producing 2 shows per week for you, both here on YouTube and via your favorite podcast platform provider. So make sure you subscribe, you rate, review, you follow, you like, leave comments, and hit me up on social media at Brian Perez NFL, at the Bears Talk. That's on Twitter. It's at the Bears Talk on Blue Sky. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're everywhere. It's either at Bears Talk or at the Bears Talk. So make sure you do your part. Follow us. And again, you guys, we want to grow this show organically. We want to grow it through your support. So make sure you hit me up. Let me know what guests you want to see here on the Bears Talk Podcast. We have one coming up in a few minutes. The great Lorin Cox from Locked On Bears will be joining us to give us his breakdown of the Bears offseason, just kind of a big picture review. Who is his favorite Bears edition of the offseason? What does he think the Chicago Bears are going to do in the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft? And a spoiler alert, he doesn't even know. None of us know what the Bears are going to do in the first round of the draft. And that's what makes this such an exciting time right now to be a Chicago Bears fan, because we're in such a different time as Bears fans. Think about it, guys. When was the last time we were 3 weeks away, give or take, from the NFL draft, and we had absolutely, positively no idea who the Chicago Bears were going to take in the first round? I can't remember when the last time that was. Last year, this time, you knew Caleb Williams was the pick. And years past, we knew Bears needed alignment. They needed a quarterback forever. They needed wide receivers. They needed edge rushers. They needed the clear one position at the top of every draft. And it was always a top 5, top 10, top 15 pick. This year, it's a little different. Yes, the Bears have a 10th overall pick, but they don't feel like a roster that was the 10th worst team in the league. Right now, what Ryan Poles has done this offseason, adding Joe Thuney, adding Jonah Jackson, adding Drew Dahlman to the offensive line. Darnell Wright is a fixture at right tackle. Left tackle, that's the one spot, right? That's the one spot where if you had to pinpoint a glaring need in the NFL draft in the first round, you could probably say left tackle. But outside of that, sure, a complimentary edge rusher to Montez Sweat would be nice. But Grady Jarrett was added. Dayo Odengbo was added. This team, the list of offseason additions goes on and on and on. And the end result is a roster that feels right now, even before a first-round pick is added to the mix, it feels like it's a team that, if everything goes well with the biggest offseason addition, head coach Ben Johnson, restructuring this organization, taking control of the offense, being the mastermind that we all think he can be, if he pans out with the roster that Ryan Poles has given him, this could be a team that challenges for the NFC North. I understand the Detroit Lions are the favorite, but their coaching staff got rated. And if anybody knows the value of a good coaching staff, a consistent coaching staff, a coaching staff that week in and week out prepares the other team, your opponent, Bears fans know how important that is, because the Chicago Bears have not had a coaching staff like that since the Lovie Smith era. And believe me, the Lions are going to go through a major adjustment without Ben Johnson leading the offense, without Aaron Glenn leading the defense, and a whole slew of assistants that left along with them. So the NFC North could be ripe for the taking, even though the Lions will be the presumptive favorite. The Vikings, they have quarterback questions. Yes, J.J. McCarthy could be a very good player, but it's a could be. Sam Darnold's gone. It's a whole new era in Minnesota. And then you have Green Bay, which to me, honestly, Green Bay is the team that might have the weakest roster after the offseason. They have not made any significant additions, in my opinion, to keep the pace with the rest of the NFC North. And I'm just not a Jordan Love guy. I don't think he has proven himself as a franchise quarterback in the NFL up to this point. I mean, look, neither has Caleb Williams, right? Caleb Williams hasn't done that either. But at the end of the day, Caleb Williams is still in that phase of his career where Rome Odunze is developing. You got DJ Moore. Who knows? Maybe you end up having a running back like Ashton Jeanty behind you. But with Ben Johnson now being able to bring Caleb Williams along, to mentor Caleb Williams, the excitement and upside around Caleb feels like it's much, much higher than what it would be with Jordan Love right now. So we're in a very unique spot. It's a fun spot to be in as a Bears fan. That's why it's a great day to be a Bears fan, because anything is possible in the first round. And as you guys know, the NFL draft is basically our Christmas. And now it's like the gift under the tree. You have no idea what it's going to be. And that's why my conversation with Lorin Cox was a fun one. We're going to bring that to you guys right now. Again, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like and subscribe on all of your favorite podcast providers. The Bears Talk podcast is back. And who better to kick it off with than the great Lorin Cox? Welcome back, a longtime friend of the Bears Talk podcast, and you know him very well from his daily Locked on Bears podcast, the great Lorin Cox, who, for my money, is one of the hardest working guys in the Bears content creator universe. Every single day, subscribe to the Locked on Bears podcast. You're going to hear this guy's insights and expertise on the Chicago Bears. So I figured in this relaunch of the Bears Talk pod, there's no better first guest than my guy, Lorin Cox. Lorin, how are you doing, my friend? It's an exciting 2025 offseason for the Chicago Bears. Are you feeling the love? Are you feeling the hype? Where are you at right now with the rebuilt, rejuvenated? I mean, I don't know what the right adjective is right now. This version of the Chicago Bears. Where are you at with this team?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be back on here. Yeah, something about this offseason feels like almost like a maturation of the Bears as like a franchise, as an organization, and as a team, right? It's like we're going from playing the kid stuff at the kids table to now like big boy football conversations where like you can draft best player available because you filled all these needs and you have all this sort of flexibility built into the team and the roster now, where it's like this is sort of like how the other half lives, and you think this is how other teams build up to be contenders instead of trying to play catch up. Like now you feel like you're more where you need to be this offseason.
You know, Ryan Poles made a long list of moves this offseason. They've been well documented across Bears media, from repairing the interior of the offensive line with some high-level upgrades at guard and center to adding to the defensive line as well with Grady Jarrett and Dayo Adengbo. For your money, what move do you think is going to move the needle most for Caleb Williams, for the defense, for the overall success of the Chicago Bears next year? If you had to put your money on the one move that Ryan Poles made this offseason that's really going to pay off, that's really going to pan out. Because, look, we've been here before, Lorin, where the hope reigns supreme for the Chicago Bears in the offseason, whether it's draft picks taken high in the first round or free agents who come in as the beacon of hope. Is there that guy from this group of free agency signings that you think will actually be the dude that gets it done for this team and puts them over the top?
I was going to say, I reserve the right to include whoever they take in the first round as a potential answer for this conversation. But for now, it has to be Joe Thuney, not a free agent signing, but a draft trade, but a trade ahead of free agency. Someone who I just think of all the moves the Bears made, like he has the fewest question marks and is just the most solid, closest to a sure thing you can get at any point. Like I like Drew Dahlman, and there's a lot to like about Jonah Jackson and Dayo Adengbo and Grady Jarrett, but like Joe Thuney, there's no injury question marks there. There's no consistency question marks there. There's no ability question marks there. There's no locker room or leadership question marks there. Like he comes in and is a bona fide, no questions asked stud on the field, and also a huge factor as a leader in the locker room and on the sidelines, like the adult in the room, in that offensive line room. I feel like we didn't properly account for the void of leadership in that room. They didn't have somebody to step up and be that voice. So as great as Thuney is, on the field, he's just as important to this team in the locker room and helping develop the other young guys in this offensive line. I just think the ripple effects there are going to be even greater than we can really fully see on the outside.
Do you have any concerns about his age? Do you think the Bears are getting a future Hall of Famer who eventually Father Time is going to catch up to him, and like everybody else, Father Time is undefeated. Do you think the Bears are getting him on the wrong side of that back half of his career? Or do you think a player like him can be a solidly productive guy, maybe not at his peak level, but still produce well into his mid-30s?
Yeah, I mean, certainly this is not a guy who's going to be a 5-year stud for your team for the long term future, but he has made the Pro Bowl each of the last 3 seasons, despite the Chiefs moving him a little bit between left tackle and left guard and having to sort of fill in and be that guy. Like, he's still playing at a high level, and we've seen some of these elite offensive linemen be able to play into their mid and late 30s. So I think you've got at least another, 2+ solid seasons here. I think about like somebody like Zach Martin from the Dallas Cowboys playing to be like 35, 36 before he just retired, or Brandon Scherf from the Jaguars was still playing at a high level until about this age 35 season. So with Tooney at 32, I'm confident for this year. I'm confident for the year after, and maybe one more from there before the question marks might start to arise.
Do you have that same sense for Grady Jarrett? Do you think the Bears are going to get the best version of Grady Jarrett, or do you think that might have been a leap of faith taken by Ryan Poles, a guy coming off of a year now removed from a pretty serious injury, who clearly was a little bit of I would say, a step slower last year than we're used to seeing, obviously recovering from a major injury. How do you think Grady Jarrett fits in with the defensive line, and ultimately, what do you think his upside is for 2025?
Yeah, I find myself a little bit more skeptical about Jarrett, certainly compared to how I feel about Joe Tooney. Like, I think Jarrett is still going to be everything you want from a leadership standpoint in that side of the ball and can sort of set the tone. And I think it's a worthwhile risk if you look at this and say, listen, in Atlanta, he was playing like 700-800 snaps over there, like just a ton of snaps for a defensive tackle who also is on the wrong side of 30 now, turns 32 later this month. Like, but if you come to Chicago and he can be the starter, but maybe ends up playing the third most snaps at that position, or among all the defensive tackles, and you can also still having playing time for Javon Dexter and Andrew Billings and maybe Zach Pickens, or if they draft another defensive tackle. Like, I think there's a path there where playing him less helps you get more out of him and gets a better version of Grady Jarrett. But I am skeptical, like, long term there, like after more than even just one season. We're all kind of going to be sitting there waiting, wondering when the big drop off is going to keep happening. Kind of like with Keenan Allen, right? I view them in the same spot where it's like maybe not right away do they fall off the map, but this is not going to be the best version of that player, and kind of taking it a year at a time to see when that drop off begins.
Well, we know for sure, Lauren, one player is going to come in to the Chicago Bears roster in 2025 who is not going to be facing age-related questions, and that's whoever they take in the first round for right now, number 10 overall. I think some of Ryan Poles' comments at the owners' meeting suggest that we could be looking at another classic Ryan Poles attempt to trade down to accumulate more picks. If you guys didn't hear it today, Ryan Poles said essentially that there's only a handful of blue graded players in this draft. That kind of stops in the single digits. Bears picked 10th. I don't know about you, but the last time I checked, number 10 is a double-digit number, which suggests the Bears probably don't think they are going to be in position to land one of those blue players unless they slide. And we see it every year. One of these guys slides that they have graded higher. Look at Rome Odunze last year. It happened with him. Perhaps it happens with one of these other guys that Poles has graded highly this year. But based on what he's saying, it sounds like maybe he's putting out the signals and alerts to the rest of the league that, hey, the 10 pick is up for sale. But assuming they don't, and they just stick and pick at number 10, the rumors aren't stopping, Lauren, about Boise State running back Ashton Jeanty and the potential match with the Chicago Bears with a top 10 pick. And, if you're a draft purist, if you've a draft scholar, a guy who has studied the NFL draft for as long as you and I have, and many of the people who are listening and watching to this podcast, running back valuation in recent years, a top 10, even first round running back is reserved for the truly elite special prospects at the position. And I don't think anybody would deny that Ashton Jeanty is in that class of prospect. At least, I don't know, maybe we'll hear you have a different take on it. I'm not sure. But regardless of your specific or individual scouting report on Jeanty, Do you think it's real here that the Bears really could use that number 10 pick on a running back? And if so, do you think it would be a smart use of the pick by Ryan Poles and the Bears?
Yeah, one of the things I get stuck on with Jeanty, I certainly think he's a great prospect and someone that you would be happy to have on your football team. But like when you look at the history of running backs taken really high in the draft in this category, like running backs this good don't make it to the 10th overall pick. They don't get out of the top 10 like that. When it's the clear-cut consensus number one running back in a draft class. Saquon Barkley goes number 2 overall. Leonard Fournette goes number 4 overall. Bijan Robinson goes 8 overall. Like Christian McCaffrey went 8 as well. Like these guys, maybe 8 is about as far as we typically see them go. But for a guy to get to 10, like Todd Gurley is about the only player who's gotten that far. And as great as Todd Gurley was, I don't know that he was necessarily in this exact same like head and shoulders above everyone else, future Hall of Famer, generational running back draft prospect in that same category. So it feels to me like if Jeanty is all he's cracked up to be, he's not going to make it anywhere near the Bears at 10, or is at least not going to get to the Bears at 10. But then if he does make it to 10, is that NFL teams telling you that maybe we don't think he's nearly that special? And so, okay, well, do we have to have Jeanty when this running back class has so many other really great prospects to like Omarion Hampton from North Carolina, or Travion Henderson from Ohio State, or Caleb Johnson from Iowa gets pegged a lot to being a Ben Johnson fit for the outside zone scheme. Like I personally feel like I wouldn't be thrilled with Jeanty as the 10th overall pick, depending on who else is there. Like if truly all the other guys you like are gone and he's the best player available, take the best player on the board because you just don't feel like anyone else is worthy of it at 10. But at the same time, if a team calls and wants to trade up to 10 to take Ashton Jeanty, I'd take a long listen to what they had to say.
Yeah, it's a funny position for the Bears to be in, and it's unique in the sense that normally when we're sitting here this close to the draft, there are glaring, obvious weaknesses on the Bears roster, whether it's the offensive line or obviously at quarterback or wide receiver. It's been pretty easy over the last few years to identify that one or two positions that's a no-brainer. If value meets need in the first round, that's the guy that's likely going to be a Chicago Bear. This is different this year. The Chicago Bears actually have a well-rounded roster without any obvious glaring hole. Left tackle probably is the closest weakness, maybe safety, that the roster has right now. So when you're in that kind of position where the Bears, sure, they were a 5-win team last year. In theory, they're not a running back away from competing for a Super Bowl. But when you really scan this roster, they might be a running back away from competing for the NFC North and beyond because, DeAndre Swift, he's okay. He's just a guy. If DeAndre Swift was still on the Philadelphia Eagles this year, DeAndre Swift would not have led them to a Super Bowl. Saquon Barkley was the reason why this team flipped from a good team, a playoff team, to a Super Bowl champion. So is Ashton Jeanty that kind of back? Is he going to be a Saquon Barkley? Is he going to be the kind of player who is a force multiplier on offense and leads to DJ Moore and Rome Odunze getting better looks in coverage because you really have to respect Ashton Jeanty coming out of the backfield? I don't know. We'll see. I like Ashton Jeanty a lot. I do think the gap between him and Omarion Hampton is not as wide as some people would suggest at this point in the draft process. But it's really fun for Bears fans to be sitting here just 3 weeks or so away from the NFL draft with a running back, which traditionally does not hold top 10 value, as a viable possible target for the Bears for one reason and one reason only, because Ryan Poles has built a good, solid, well-rounded roster that can make a luxury pick, that can finally use that first-round pick as a luxury selection, which very rarely have the Bears been in position to be able to do that. So traditionally, historically, the Bears would be a team that's looking for that left tackle in the first round, the lineman, the cornerstone piece. And they could still be doing that, Lauren, at number 10 overall, because this year's draft doesn't have the no-brainer top 5 offensive linemen in its class. The top offensive lineman, basically from the start of college football season all the way until the NFL scouting combine, has been Will Campbell, the left tackle from LSU, who, because of the classic draft process measurables issues, is starting to potentially have questions about his pro fit. We saw it happen with Northwestern's Peter Skoronski a couple of years ago. Left tackle at Northwestern, had a great career, He's an NFL guard, will be a great guard for a very long time, but didn't even get a chance to play tackle in the league. Will Campbell's arms are actually like more problematic. They might have measured a little longer than Skoronski's, but his wingspan is almost historically small. Where do you stand on this? I mean, Ben Johnson said at the owners' meeting that he just trusts the tape you put on the film. And if arm length isn't popping out as a problem on tape against SEC defenders, the dude's just a left tackle, and he's a left tackle in the pros too. And I like that. I like a coach that's saying basically the classic trust the tape, watch the tape. But reality sometimes paints a very different picture once you get to the pros. You know, if you have T-Rex arms, you will get exposed. Do you think Will Campbell can be the exception to the rule? And is he a guy that you would be comfortable if the Bears spent the number 10 pick or even traded up to get him in the first round?
Yeah, I'm with you on Ben Johnson's approach there. Like if they were to just set a number on the threshold and say, if you don't hit this number, then you're no good. Like that's too close-minded to the possibility of exceptions to any kind of rule there. I do worry about it a little bit. Like Ben Johnson's quote was like, if you see it on tape and it's consistently a problem, like that's when you got to go check. And it's like, there were times when it was a problem, especially I think even in the running game when he's kind of getting up over his toes and kind of leaning forward just to try and, get enough length on the run blocker in front of him to create that space. And there were times when longer pass rushers at the SEC level could take advantage of that. So then it's like, how often do you expect that to translate to the NFL? Because it wasn't all the time. I don't know that it was a, consistent problem, quote unquote, but if it showed up occasionally, then will it show up occasionally at the NFL, or could it show up more at the NFL? And none of us have the exact question, the exact answer to that question. I certainly think getting him in a private workout is going to go a long way for the Bears to really get a sense of, how quick are your hands? Because sometimes if you're just quicker with your shorter arms than the opponent is, you can get them in first. If you just condense that space and you get your hands up first before they do, doesn't matter if their arms are longer. If yours are there first, that's still a victory for you. So it can be overcome, but I just have enough. I have enough of a seed of a doubt in there that gives me pause, where I'm not going to be mad or think it's a bad pick if the Bears do pull the trigger on him at 10. But I have enough doubts where it's like, man, I really would love to come away from the 10th overall pick with like no questions asked. I know exactly what this guy is. I know exactly what he's going to play. I know exactly how good he's going to be. And I can see clearly what the next 5 years with him are going to look like. And even though we all think Will Campbell can move inside a guard if worst case scenario, like I just don't like leaving that up to chance or have that possibility with a 10th overall pick in the draft. Later in the first or in the second, guys have question marks. That's fine. But there's something about like top 10 pick, give me a surefire, no questions asked. And even if we think we know the answer to that question, it's still a question that we have to ask.
And if we look at Ryan Pohl's draft history, I mean, one of the reasons why he drafted Kiran Amagaji in the third round out of Yale, which is arguably the biggest jump in competition from the Ivy League to the NFL, was because Kiran checked all the physical traits boxes. I mean, he was the walking prototype of a left tackle in the NFL. He bumped him up in terms of his final grade because he had the long arms. He had everything that you look for in a pro prospect. You have to imagine that the opposite will also be true, that if he's going to elevate a player despite level of competition concerns and arguably like whatever he did against Harvard and Princeton is irrelevant in an NFL evaluation. If he bumps him up to a third round grade strictly because of physical traits, then you have to imagine that an SEC high level player might get bumped down a little bit because he's lacking the physical traits. Physical traits clearly matter to Ryan Poles when it comes to offensive linemen. So I think in an effort to predict the future about what Ryan Poles and the Bears might do at an offensive lineman pick, you have to look back in the past and see what he's done with his past selections of offensive linemen. And Amagaji, who could be competing with Braxton Jones, I think that would be negligent, but he could be the number one contender to be the left tackle to unseat Braxton Jones. He's only on this roster because of upside, which is only because of physical traits. So I really don't know if Will Campbell's going to check the boxes for Poles, but they're not going to come out and say that because then it lowers the value. They might want Will Campbell to get drafted before them at number 10. They're not going to say, yeah, arms, we're concerned about arm length, because maybe that means Armand Membu gets bumped up a little bit. Maybe Josh Simmons gets bumped up a little bit. And these are not guys with, long arms. I mean, they barely hit the NFL minimums, both Simmons and Membu, but they're a little longer than Will Campbell. And I think if the Bears had a pick, if everything else is even in an evaluation, they're going to value those traits. I mean, they're just going to. So as much as I like Will Campbell, the character, Will Campbell, the football player, the football IQ, the locker room type presence that he can be. There's a bunch of videos on social media, him in the weight room, him with his teammates. You could tell that he's a Ryan Poles guy. I just don't know if Ryan Poles will break his tenets of scouting and really breach what is one of the first things anyone talks about when they talk about offensive tackles, no matter how stupid it might sound, is the arm length. Will Campbell doesn't have it. So it's going to really be interesting to see if Ryan Poles will go away from clearly what's one of the most important traits when he scouts an offensive lineman. And go ahead.
Along those lines, like since you talked about Skoronski, we just have to go back to 2023 when the Bears were on the clock with the 9th overall pick the 10th overall pick when they traded down, and Skoronski was there, and they went and took the bigger, more athletic right tackle prospect in Darnell Wright there. Like, there's not that these are one-to-one comps at all, but like Membu's a lot more like Darnell Wright in that regard, and Will Campbell's a lot more like Skoronski, and we've seen him decide on those two players when both were available for him, and we wonder if those two players were both on the board at 10 this year, if he might make a similar decision.
That's a great point, Lauren. I mean, again, trust what somebody has done. Trust the actions, not the words. And multiple times now, multiple case studies, multiple examples, we have seen Ryan Poles choose traits over even level of competition. So I think Will Campbell to the Bears is a long shot. We'll put it that way. But if Ryan Poles says there's single-digit blue-graded players in their board, and you have the Patriots possibly taking Will Campbell at number 4, and he's not one of those blue players for Ryan Poles, that's a great thing for the Bears, right? That's exactly what they want to have happen. So they're definitely, Ben Johnson's playing it perfectly by saying arm length is not a problem, especially if he knows it is for Ryan Poles. It looks like my video is glitching out a little bit here as I kind of looked. I don't know if you're seeing that too, Lauren. I apologize for anybody watching on YouTube. I'll try to fix that in the post-production here, but we'll get that fixed for the next episode. One thing the Bears might be trying to fix out of nowhere, Lauren, which I find completely odd here as we have the run up to the draft, is tight end Tyler Warren is suddenly like the flavor of the month for Chicago Bears fans. Even Ben Johnson calling him just a heck of a football player. Dennis Allen, the defensive coordinator, saying he's the kind of player that will give off opposing defenses nightmares, tough to defend. And suddenly Tyler Warren, who I love him as a prospect. I think he's absolutely every bit worthy of a first-round pick, probably a mid to late first-rounder for me. I can't see any way the Chicago Bears, with a 26-year-old Cole Kmet, who's still on a 4-year, $50 million contract. I understand the guaranteed money's gone or whatever the case might be. But you have a tight end who just 2 years ago looked like he was ascending into the upper class of the NFC tight ends before Shane Waldron basically ruined him. And he's only 26 years old, where if you know anything about the tight end position, it takes a little longer for those guys to really develop into the big-time studs, with the exception of the rare Brock Bowers, who's, after one season, I think it's safe to say he's a Hall of Fame talent. Tyler Warren at the number 10 pick, I mean, am I crazy, Lauren, or would that be the absolute worst way the Bears could spend their first-round pick?
The whole thing screams draft smokescreen, doesn't it? Like, when else a month before the draft have we ever heard the Chicago Bears raving about a specific prospect with specific things they like about him? Like, they don't typically go on to then draft that player. Like, to be like this, they'll get asked about prospects and say, oh yeah, Rome Odunze looks like a talented wide receiver. He's a great receiver in this great wide receiver class, and we'd be happy to have him. But like, to get as specific as Ben Johnson did about how he's a football player, we could do so many things with him. Like, teams don't get that specific into players that they actually really like, because they don't want other teams to know that. Like, if the Bears really like Tyler Warren, they would not go out of their way to keep telling us about it in multiple answers to multiple interview questions, and not just saying, hey, we like him, but give like specific details about the coach really liked him. And like, that to me all seems like smoke to make other teams think they might like Tyler Campbell, so that or Tyler Warren, so that if he's on the board at 10 and the team wants to trade up for him, you better give us a nice draft pick to make sure you get him. If you're, say, the Indianapolis Colts or the Miami Dolphins that might want a tight end, like to me that's what this feels more like. I certainly wouldn't love it as a first round pick. I mean, if you really see him as a blue chip prospect, he's the guy that's there, then you could probably do worse. And a number 2 tight end can play as much as a number 3 wide receiver. Ben Johnson uses a lot of number 2 tight ends. I can justify it. I can find ways to make it worthwhile, but it doesn't feel like it would be the best use of that draft pick when you've got potentially other offensive linemen or pass rushers or other more premium players that can have a bigger impact on your team this year and in the long term.
Yeah, and again, when we talk about Ryan Poles' roster construction, the way he's approached this team, I don't see Ryan Poles as a general manager investing so much capital into the tight end position. A massive contract for Cole Kmet, a top 10 pick on another tight end. I mean, I get it. If the guy's a freak and he's a guy that can go like a Travis Kelce or Brock Bowers and push for 100 catches and 1,200 yards. When I watch Tyler Warren, maybe a slight upgrade over Cole Kmet. You're not going to spend the 10th overall pick on a guy like that. I don't care how fun of a college player he is. And let's not forget the Kevin White experience. Kevin White had one of the greatest single seasons as a senior coming out of West Virginia, which elevated his stock into being a top 10 pick for the Chicago Bears. And yes, injuries derailed him. Who knows what Kevin White might have been if he didn't have that kind of a start to his career in terms of injuries. But take a look at Tyler Warren's career production at Penn State. He's a one-year guy. I know he's had reasons why over the last couple of years, but he exploded this season to where, like, if you take the previous 3 years of his college career combined, it didn't even come close to what he did this year. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily this, death blow to his pro projection, but old school scouts, when a guy has one good year of production, you got to look at his injury history, coaching scheme, fit, whether he was a fit, whether did he have run-ins with the coaches, why wasn't he on the field more, maybe just better upperclassmen in front of him. You got to be able to find the reason why. And again, I'm not saying that Tyler Warren is that guy. I mean, clearly he could do just about anything on a football field, but it's a very rich draft projection for a player that, Brock Bowers was a dude from his freshman year on, coming out through college. He was everybody knew that when he was ready to turn pro, he was going to be a top 10 pick. Tyler Warren became that this year. He became a top 10 pick, which a lot of guys do. But again, I would push the brakes on this Tyler Warren narrative to the Bears. In fact, I don't think there's any chance the Bears select Tyler Warren. And maybe this video will come back to haunt me. Maybe this episode of this podcast will come back to haunt me. And I will lose all credibility with my Bears talkers out there. But I don't see any way Tyler Warren is the Chicago Bears first round pick. So, Lauren, we're going to end it on this. And I'm going to hold you to this. It'll probably come on another time before the draft, and maybe you can change your opinion. But I'm going to hold you to this opinion that you could potentially say is an April Fool's joke down the road. Who is the guy? You have one opportunity to make this call and to make it right, make it correct. Who are the Bears taking at number 10 overall?
So just before I answer, am I predicting who I think Ryan Poles will take, or who I would take if I were Ryan Poles?
If you had to bet your entire life savings on one outcome at the number 10 pick, however you reach that conclusion, who is a Chicago Bear by the end of Thursday night, April 24th?
Oh man, that's really hard. That's really hard because we spent this whole podcast talking about how maybe not Jeanty, maybe not Campbell, maybe not Tyler Warren. So then who? I mean, I think the outcome is a trade. A trade down is what they would like to do. That's probably what I would think is the most likely outcome. But if they had to stay at 10, there's not that easy to predict magical player fit there. That's just like, oh man, you're really just hoping they land Rome Odunze with the 9th overall pick, and lo and behold, they get it done. So I don't have a good confident pick to say this is the guy that they're going to take there. I mean, I think somebody like one of the corners like Will Johnson or Shadé Barron could be in this conversation. I think the pass rushers like Mike Green or James Pierce can be in this conversation. Even Calvin Banks from Texas could be in this conversation. I mean, there's a lot of different directions they could go. And I at the end of the day, if you have to pin me down, I think Dennis Allen is getting one of the big pass rushers that he likes. But whether that's Mykel Williams or Shamar Stewart or James Pierce or Mike Green, I can't tell you which one they're really going to pin down as the guy they got to have.
Lauren, let me just say this. Bears fans need to be really happy you're not in the war room when they're on the clock at the number 10 pick, because I think we would run out of time making the pick. I don't think we would actually get the pick in. The Bears would get skipped.
Well,
this is, but again, but exactly what you're saying, Lauren. Like when Bears fans are doing mock drafts and ranking who they would want at number 10, it's almost like you can't even come to a conclusion within yourself of who you would want this team to pick. Who do you want them to pick, Lauren? Who's the guy you want at number 10?
Yeah, that one's easier for me. I really love James Pierce from Tennessee. Like he is, to me, is the best pass rusher not named Abdul Carter in this draft class. I think he's just fine in the running game. I know he's not as big as what Dennis Allen typically might prefer on the edge, but he's been such a consistent, productive pass rusher in a lot of different ways at Tennessee. And I know there's off the field question marks about maybe some maturity questions there, but that's why you sign someone like Grady Jarrett to lead your defensive line. That's why you've got Montez Sweat and Deo Odengbo. Like you trust your defensive line coaching staff to, like, to me, give me the really, really talented player who's got traits and film at the pass rush premium position. That's where I think I know he's not projected quite in that range for a lot of people, but to me, he's ahead of Mykel Williams and Shamar Stewart and Mike Green, and I would take him as my next best pass rusher.
Lauren, I think you're going to get a lot of responses on Twitter to that one. I'm not quite sure James Pierce is that guy, but listen, stick to your board, man. You got to stick to your board. Lauren, where can all the faithful Bears talkers find your spoken word, your written word, your social media? Tell them where to find the man, the myth, the legend, Lorin Cox.
Yeah, if you want to send all your James Pierce-based complaints to me, you can find me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can read my writing over at Chicago Bears on SI, and you can hear me 5 days a week on the Locked On Bears podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Lauren, my man, thank you as always for coming on. You will be back before the NFL draft kicks off and after the NFL draft concludes to get some draft grades. Can't wait to read all your work on Bears on SI. Have a great night, my friend, and bear down.
Appreciate you having me on.
I want to thank Lorin Cox for joining us today on the Bears Talk podcast. And I want to thank you guys, the Bears talkers out there, for jumping back on board with us as we get our podcast legs back under us. You'll be seeing us and hearing from us at least 2 times a week this offseason and into the regular season next year. We're going to have a lot more draft content coming up in the next couple of weeks. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, like this show, subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast provider. I do want to apologize. There seems like there was some glitchy issues here with the video today. We are going to get that worked out. Our production team will take a look at that. But again, Bears fans, thank you so much for coming back to the Bears Talk podcast. And as always, most importantly, never forget, bear down.
Thanks for listening to the Bears Talk podcast with Brian Perez, your ultimate source for all things Bears. Be sure to rate and review us and let us know what you think of the podcast.